Morning. I gotta say, I'm so nervous this morning for some reason that my butterflies are actually playing banjos in my stomach. So bear with me here. We did talk about in our pastoral team meeting how a little bit of butterflies is actually really good before we walk up here and present. So I welcome them this morning. Well, in our pastoral meeting a couple months ago, we were talking about the past week and we were planning out for the future, and we were looking at the future sermons and the preaching schedule, and this week jumped out at me. And I'm only supposed to preach supposedly twice a year, and that's usually taken up by Friedenswald, which is an awesome weekend. If you haven't been to it before, that's a great weekend. And then one other time. Well, you get me 3 times this year, so sorry about that. But I saw the topic of swords to plowshares, and I knew I was going to have to do it. I knew I was going to come in guns blazing. Pun intended. I was going to start out my sermon with something like this. There is not one person in this world, no, not one, that could ever convince me that a follower of Christ should ever have an AR. That was going to be my opening line. I wanted to tell you of all the arguments that I've had with God-fearing Christians about why they need 40 guns in their home. It's their right, you see. It's for their protection. I wanted to talk about all the gun violence that I've seen as a paramedic and the devastation that has reigned on families and on the rescuers. I wanted to talk a lot about guns, but as we know, what we want to do and the path that God leads us on is not always the same. So I was reading these verses and preparing for my message, and I realized that what I wanted to talk about was nothing compared to what God was saying through Isaiah. There was so much more than that in these verses. This is a call for peace. A vision of peace brought to us by Isaiah, given to him by God. Not only for the future or the past, but for today. A peace that this broken world so desperately needs. Now, Isaiah was speaking to the people of Judah. He was speaking to them his vision for what is yet to come, what God has in store for them. My goal today, though, is to see how we can take the words of Isaiah written 3,000 years ago and see that the vision is what God has for our lives today. Isaiah started out his vision of a mountain of the Lord's temple in the highest of mountains. This was an incredible image. Think of any of the marvels that you've ever seen, whether it be Grand Canyon or maybe you've been to the pyramids, those kind of things. Those pale in comparison to the mountain that Isaiah was visioning here. The other day we were talking about the world's highest bridge. It was built in China and it actually just opened this year. It's about 2,000 feet above the Bayapan River. It's also the longest mountainous area. It's also the longest through a mountainous area at about a mile through the mountains. Oh yeah, in case you find yourself there, you can also bungee jump off of it 1,900 feet up. So I won't be there, but take pictures if you go. These are nothing compared to the Lord's temple that Isaiah is envisioning. And people are streaming to it. Not just a certain group of people, all nations. From every background, from every class, every gender, every political stance. All nations are streaming in to seek God. They aren't fighting about it or telling people that they aren't allowed. They're saying, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his paths." They were all welcoming. They are encouraging people to walk together, side by side, to be with the Lord and to learn. This is peace, and God is calling us to it now, in our everyday. welcoming people to walk with us as we journey with God. This is where I always like to insert the phrase that we as pastors love to say and we as Silverwood love to show to the world. Here it is. No matter where you are in life or who you believe yourself to be, you are a beloved child of God. God loves you and wants to have a relationship with you. And we as a church want to walk side by side as we venture together to the mountain of the Lord's temple. Not in the future, but right now. The next part is the catalyst for why you see me up here today. A verse that you've probably heard a few times. Verse 4, God will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. This gets me fired up just imagining this in the literal sense. Imagine a world where we would allow God to soften our hearts and be the mediator for us. Imagine a world where the energy that it's put into making destroyers of life is put into cultivating life. Imagine a world that instead of spending $892 billion in defense each year, we take that money and feed people, give them a place to live, and give them hope. So I wanted to visualize this number. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so I did some Googling. So if you take that $892 billion, that is actually a little over $3,400 per person in taxes for every adult in the United States. It goes to the so-named Department of War. So here is an even more fun thing to grasp. Now imagine if you spent $1 million every day. Is $1 million a lot of money? Yeah. The kid says yes. So if the kids say that $1 million is a lot, I would agree. So if you take $1 million and I could spend that every day for if I had $1 million every day, it would take me 2,449 years to spend the annual budget that is used on defense in our country. 24 and a half centuries of spending $1 million every day goes to defense. And we can't even make sure that people are fed in this country. As a side note, at convention, if you haven't been to convention, put a plug in for that as well. I attended a really cool seminar. It was interesting. It was called the War Tax Resistance Seminar. While I haven't put any of this into place in my own life, it's a great concept and one that you can look up. It's one to ponder further. It's the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee. That is a lot to say. They're actually meeting this weekend in Massachusetts, but they also have a wonderful website that you can check out talking about war tax resistance. So Isaiah is visioning something pretty profound and amazing. Weapons of destruction converted into tools of life cultivation. Instruments of death transformed into tools to harbor life. Another interesting morsel about this vision of Isaiah is that God is not just calling on the destruction of these weapons. God could just say, throw all these weapons into a fire, never to be used again. But instead, this vision is to use what is harmful for what is good. Use it to help people be fed and nourished. Literally, death transforming to life. But I think that there's more to these verses than just the literal meaning of them. If we look at them a little deeper, I think we can also fit it into where we are to be. The way we are to be to people. What if instead of beating our swords into plowshares, we are to change our words of hate into sharing love? What if instead of spears into pruning hooks, we transform our apathy into empathy? How much energy are you pouring into are an ongoing argument? How much time and brain power are we wasting in complaining about someone else when we could be using that time and energy for good? And I feel like I can ask you these questions because I do the same thing. I think we all do, right? Amy actually called me out on this recently. I was complaining about something, and she challenged me to look at it another way. She challenged me for the next 2 weeks to go without complaining about this particular thing. 2 weeks, that's a long time, just so you know. I can't tell you exactly how, because it hasn't been the 2 weeks, but I'm expecting my perspective to change on this constant lamentation. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I'll let you know if it goes good. Isaiah ends these verses with an invitation. O house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord. He's not saying that we are to wait for peace. Quite the opposite. Isaiah is inviting us to live out peace right here and right now. Let us walk in the light of the Lord. What does that look like for you? There is a ton of darkness around us. There's a lot of darkness around Isaiah in his days too. Maybe for you, it's choosing kindness when others choose cruelty. Maybe for you, it is not to be a keyboard warrior. Maybe for you, it is forgiving when you think someone might not deserve it. Maybe for you, it's noticing the needs of a person, even if it's going to mess up your plans. I don't know what your maybe is, but I encourage you to examine yourself and walk in the light of the Lord. I want to end with some hope. A lot of you might be feeling that there isn't much hope in the world today. I'm right there with you at times. All around us, we see death and destruction, turmoil and strife, more hate and anger being spewed at each other all over the place. More so than I think I have in my 47 years. That's a lot. Now that I say it in front of everybody. It's in our faces constantly. But the days of Isaiah were not peaceful either. There may not have been the interweb, but politics were jacked, fear was all around, so much uncertainty. And yet, the same God that was with Isaiah then is with us today. A God that wants peace in our lives. A God that wants to walk with us side by side in the light of the Lord. May your everyday be transformed into the peace and love that God has in store for you. Amen.